I was telling him about different designations for the LLC because he was forming his own, all this sort of stuff, and he just had no clue. And I'm just like, what? Like, I don't understand how they don't teach this, you know?
Well, I think you bring up good points. Like, one of the reasons I think that I've been very successful in my role is I understand like, how important it is to be a revenue generation for the business. Like, that piece, right, is what allows me to be able to try new things, being able to, ensure as a leader, right? You also want to be able to make sure that your employees and everyone else with you, is staying employed. But at the same side, right? Like that revenue generation piece is what keeps the business going, right? That's why we all have jobs. That's why we have security. That's why we have all these things. So being that kind of business enablement piece was, I think, key for me. And it's also key for understanding working with customers. It's all about their business at the end. We can think it's about our little domain, but maybe our domain is a supporting function and we need to support the business and make sure that we're helping enable it and push it forward. Whatever, and maybe it's not revenue even, right? You could be in a charity or some sort of healthcare mission, right? But it's all about who the customer is on the other side and how you're supporting them.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a really important thing to also like really dial in and learn early on in your career as possible, right? Is every customer should be getting that white glove treatment, in my opinion, right? Like I just feel like every customer deserves, what we would call white glove treatment, where you're going above and beyond for a customer, whether they paid for that level of service or not. Of course, there's some delineations where it's like, oh, okay, like you didn't pay for 24/7 support. That is extremely expensive for us to provide that sort of service. So yeah, you do kind of need to pay for that, right? Like we'll give you an hour here or there, right? But if you need that level, you need to pay for that, right? But there's been many times in my career where you just go above and beyond. You're providing that level of service, and you want to give that great impression, right? And I remember early on in my career, I was leading the federal and military program for a company. And so all of my clients were federal agencies and the military and whatnot. And their standard for work is like absolutely insane. Like it is a totally different level.
On a good side or a bad side? What do you like? Their
Man, like
qualities great or
well, I'll give you an example. I think that their quality is extremely good. There are different funnels within the government that kind of don't show that high level of quality. But I was in a place where they have people that used to currently, I don't even know, work for the NSA, and they created like the STIGs, like the literal STIGs that we use to harden the systems. This guy like created it.
smart people, right? People that
It is beyond smart. Like these guys are doing it for fun, like they're there just having the time of their lives. I actually had one of them on my podcast maybe a couple of years ago, but like, and that guy was like beyond smart. This guy built a rocket himself and sent it to the moon if he wanted to, like,
I love talking to those type of people. Right? You just feel
yeah,
like when someone out there has had all these experiences and they think just differently, right? The
yeah,
brain connects different pieces together. And I've always been a big proponent of the smartest idea in the room wins, right?
yeah.
And having people that you can work with like that or adjacent to you, right? They can help you influence that and see a different perspective is always awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. It's almost like how I relate to it, because I'm getting my PhD right now, right? And it's in a specialty, it's within an area, two areas that like I know nothing about. I mean, even to this day, right? Like if I try and explain, quantum encryption any further than like how I would to like a kindergartner, I'm sure someone in the quantum space would, ridicule me heavily, all 10 of them, because like no one knows how that stuff is working unless you're like actually in the field for real, every single day, right? But I feel like I describe it as like cracking open your brain almost. Like you're cracking open your brain in a way that's like, I could think like this, like it's not, it's not thinking a certain way, but it's thinking in a certain format that you're immediately going down different rabbit holes that the normal person who I'm going to relate to it like this, right, is that normal person that's getting that 9 to 5, that's all that they've been taught. They didn't go down the entrepreneurial route or anything like that, and they go their entire career 9 to 5 and they retire. And that's a certain way of thinking, right? Like that's a totally different mentality from what we're describing. This other thing is like it's just like a sandbox. You know, you start realizing the world is a sandbox at some point and you get to build it however you see fit.
I think it's like being what you're describing to me is like you're going outside of your comfort zone, right? And it sounds to me like you're also going outside of your comfort zone for this PhD, right? Like this is all
Very.
new areas, and I have a philosophy which I always tell anyone who ever joins and talks to me at Europe Arc, like always say yes. You say no the second time. But the first time, say yes. Challenge yourself. See if you can get it done. Right? I'm not telling you to go, work 120 hours. I'm just saying, try to say yes to that opportunity, that experience that you can, push yourself a little farther because you can open up different ways of thinking, different ways of being successful. You might find a passion that you've, start loving so much that you want to just do it the rest of your life, right? Like I always like to give people opportunities, and some of like the best people that I've ever worked with from cyber have come from outside of cyber altogether, right? Kind of someone coming in from a customer support side of things or coming in from an internal IT role where they just felt like they could really, that they're accurate and due diligent and they can exceed and make the customer outcomes happy, right? Make that customer happy, right? They'll ensure that success. And those people, I've seen them go all the way to CISOs from support. The opportunities are there. It's just a matter of, are you going to say yes to them?
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. You know, I tell everyone or I describe it like this, you say yes, no matter what, and you figure out how to do it later. I early on when I was like in college and everything, I would listen to, different like motivational speakers and stuff. And yeah, it probably sounds like corny or whatnot, but when you grow up poor and someone, tells you like, hey, there's this one little bit of information. You just need to, change your thinking. You change your mindset of how you're addressing these different problems, right? Once you do that, you start, trying to figure out how to do it. And that was like one of the biggest things for me was saying yes and figuring out how to do it later. Like I said yes to the PhD and know a topic. And then I said yes to the topic where my chair kind of like worked me down that path. And he actually tried to talk me back from going that difficult. He had to do that like 2 or 3 times because I was just choosing something that was like insane.
Well, he wanted you to be successful somewhere in the time, right? He's trying to
Yeah.
fill that.
He's like, I want you to be successful in the next 3 to 5 years, not 10 to 20 years. Like, let's get through this thing, which I totally get. Right. And then, again, right. Like pushing myself so far outside of my bound or my comfort zone of going into zero trust with satellites and post quantum encryption. Okay, I don't know anything about satellites. I don't know anything about post quantum encryption. I still feel like I don't, but like that's not my PhD isn't like balancing